2025. Thank you for your patience. We'll jump into it. I know that there are people that have joined us before, and there's also some people that are new to this. There's a lot of brands as well as distributors on the call, and some people that are just cannabis aficionados, if you will, that have joined us to learn a little bit more about the beverage sector. So we'll jump into it. New year, new deck. Not a new presenter, so you guys are stuck with me. But we are formally, I guess, introducing the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. And this is our hemp-derived THC beverage distributor education program. We host this call monthly, every third Thursday. This one we had to move because of a conflict with a meeting on the Hill, which might happen on occasion, but we will try to keep it to the third Thursday of every month as much as we can. Introducing you to the Coalition. So CABA, or the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives, our goal is to educate and influence federal legislation. We've created a code of conduct that outlines how we would like to see this category regulated, that we believe has sensible regulation in place that protects the consumer, but also allows for continued growth and expansion of the category through mainstream retail channels. We've outlined our recommendations. I've kind of summarized them here into a few bullet points, but none of this will probably surprise you if you guys are already in the beverage space. Proper age gating, 21 plus, access to alcohol distribution and retail. We want to be sold anywhere where alcohol is sold and served. Third-party testing, standardized packaging requirements, no marketing to minors, no health claims, and we've defined low doses up to 10 milligrams per serving, 100 milligrams per package, which would allow for 4-packs, 6-packs, but also those multi-serving spirits-like products that you've probably seen, Palmos being one on the screen right here on the left-hand side. We'll dive into some of these specifics, and you'll see where a lot of those recommendations for regulation kind of come into play. One thing I'll throw out there, if you guys do have questions, the Q&A section of the webinar should allow you to add questions. I will try to get to as many of those as I can at the end of this presentation. If I'm not able to, I will follow up separately via email and try to get your questions answered. My contact information will be at the end of this as well, so you can always follow up with additional questions that, we can set up another call if we need to. But this is kind of an overview of the coalition itself. We started lobbying on the Hill about 4 months ago, and we've made incredible progress and have really built some champions on the Hill. And we're really excited for the next year. I would say, knock on wood, I'm more than cautiously optimistic that we will be able to come to, create some guardrails that, again, protect the consumer, but allow our channel to continue growing, leveraging hemp-derived THC. Like I said, we believe in proper regulation of THC beverages, which allows for the growth of the category while protecting the consumer. This is a snapshot of our board members. It's really unifying the voice of the hemp beverage industry as well as the alcohol industry. So a lot of our board members from the alcohol side are distributors, retailers, including Specs, which is the largest liquor retailer in Texas. We also work with Tilray, who is in cannabis, beer, health and wellness, and now Hemp D9 beverage. And then you'll see a couple of brands you probably recognize if you've been in the beverage space for a while. So you've got Source Technology, who I was formerly with for the last 6.5 years. You have Vertosa, Open Book Extracts, 3 of the top suppliers excuse me, in this space. And then you'll see brands like Palmos, Wink, Keef, Rebel Rabbit, Emergent Beverages, which has about 20 brands, I think, to their portfolio, maybe even more, as well as Can. A lot of the leading beverages that actually started in the regulated channels, particularly in California, and have expanded into hemp-derived D9 because of the success they're having, again, having access to that mainstream distribution channel. Meeting your host. This is always awkward because now I'm looking at my face and it's a little strange, but I wanted to introduce myself because there are a lot of new people that registered for this year. Diana Eberlein, I am chair of the Coalition for Adult Beverage Alternatives. I am based in Washington, D.C., so every time our lobbyist hits the Hill for a meeting, I join them. I wanted you guys to know a little bit more about me personally. Cannabis beverage consumer since 2016. That was the first time I had ever tried a cannabis beverage. It was also within the same year that I had first tried cannabis. I was in my 30s, was trying to figure out why everyone in Seattle, Washington consumed cannabis and how they were finding their perfect sweet spot. A lot of trial and error for me personally, beverage was the only way I could control my experience and my dose. So I refer to myself as a recovering DARE baby because, you know, if you went through the DARE program, they basically tell you that this is the gateway to all these terrible things. And now we know that for many people, this is actually a way to seek relief from many things, opioids, you name it. So as a result, I've become a real advocate for this category in particular. I've worked in cannabis for the last 8 years, 7 years in cannabis beverage specifically. I have a lot of favorite THC beverages. I'm fortunate to have a lot of friends now in this space, so I get to try a lot of different things. Some of these listed here are my favorites, but there's just so many more, and there's really something for everybody. And I do want everyone to know this is not an either or. I do love my red wine, and wine glassed is not the right phrasing. It would be I like collecting wine glasses. I have a lot of glassware considering I live by myself. I have like 80 glasses. So if you're ever in DC, hit me up. We can share one of these beverages together. Our priority at the coalition is to protect the consumer. Everything that we go over today is really about educating distributors and retailers so that they can identify the high quality products that are in the market and carry those so that the consumer has access to the products they should want to be seeking out. There are so many products now on the market. I spoke with the head of the THC beverage department at Specs, and he said he sampled between 300 and 400 products. That's an incredible amount when you think about the regulated space and if you went to California and you went to a dispensary, there might be 10 brands, maybe 20, and that would be on the high side. So the idea that there's 300 brands, 400 brands out there is really remarkable, but also who are they? Where are they coming from? Where are they sourcing their materials? There's a lot of questions that, with a new category, retailers and distributors need to be asking. And we want to go over those with you so that you know what the good actors should be able to provide. And that way the consumer doesn't get access to the bad products. And I shouldn't say that they're necessarily bad, but brands should be prepared to provide documentation, be extremely transparent. If you were preparing to be around for when this category is regulated by the TTB, you should be getting all your documentation in a row, having historical data on testing. Those should come second nature because any other product would include that sort of information as well. So we'll go over a number of things. This is kind of a high level overview, but we'll be basically going over the basics of how to evaluate THC beverages, as well as explaining what THC beverages are and why the experience is so consistent and why we're seeing them grow in demand in the mainstream marketplace. So the new adult beverage alternative. So THC beverages is what this category is called, but it's kind of under this new umbrella of new adult beverage alternative. You will see in some places they'll put this in the non-alc space. We feel that it's actually better if it is referred to as an adult beverage alternative because the word alternative does imply that there could be an intoxicating effect, whereas non-alc, a lot of consumers assume that the product itself will not be intoxicating. THC is intoxicating, and we want to make sure the consumer is very much aware of what they are getting. Because as you know, if you say this is a hemp beverage, a lot of people will assume it's CBD, which does not have the psychotropic intoxicating effect that THC with D9 does have. So, in terms of types that you'll see out there, you will see ready to drink, which I think is the most common and particularly important right now for brands that are building a lifestyle and kind of consumer story, because when someone is holding your can, that is marketing for your product. People see it, they acknowledge the branding, they ask questions, they might ask to take a sip of it. If you take it off the tap or you pour it into a glass, that could be anything at that point. So ready to drink is really how a lot of brands have entered the market, but there are still multi-serving and ready to pour options as well. So Palmos, that was on one of the first screens, that was how they entered the market in the regulated space in California. They still offer those products as well as ready to drink solutions as well. And then there's ready to mix beverage additives. On the screen where I was showing you some of my favorite beverages, you probably saw a can roadie. It's a little plastic kind of, you rip off the top and then you pour it into either a mocktail, or you can literally squirt it right into your mouth if you need to. It's made to be a drink mix and something that's extremely portable. You will start seeing those, and those are usually in single serving packets within a larger package. And then we talk about the legality a little bit. So back in 2018, when the Farm Bill was last approved, The definition of hemp legalized all extracts and derivatives of hemp. Now, hemp was defined as anything that has up to 0.3% of THC or D9. Everything above that is called marijuana and goes through those regulated cannabis channels in the various markets that have legalized it. Everything else was technically legalized by the wording in the Farm Bill. It took some time for Beverage to realize that this meant that they might be able to take that D9, isolate it out of the hemp, and therefore create a THC beverage. That probably started about 2.5, 3 years ago in Minnesota, the pioneer state, if you will. I don't think anyone saw Minnesota being the pioneer state, but they sure are. And they really led the way with normalizing THC beverages by incorporating them into everyday hospitality, restaurants, hotels. It's more bizarre to see a menu that doesn't offer THC beverages than one that doesn't rather. It is really amazing how they've normalized it, and we're hoping to be able to do that in other markets as well. But one thing I do want to clarify, CABA will provide some guidelines, but we're not providing legal advice. I definitely always say, love your lawyer, love your consultant, use them to understand the marketplace, and definitely dive in if you are looking to enter a market. Work with your strategic partners. A lot of them have studied the marketplace, have some guidelines, and can work together. That's the beauty of this market right now. A lot of us are working together and collaborating in a pretty big way. Benefits of the beverage. So as a consumption method, what's really amazing is the consistency and the experience that it can offer. Anyone who's had a bad edible experience, maybe in college, they had a brownie, they didn't feel anything, they had another one, and then both of them hit at the same time. And then they're spending 6 hours staring at a wall, eating a half gallon of ice cream, second guessing every decision they've ever made. That was probably just me, but that's definitely happened. And I know some of you have had a similar experience. What's great about Beverage is because of the emulsion technology that is utilized to create beverages, where they break down the molecules into little bitty pieces and then enrobe them in something that disguises the particles so that your body absorbs them like water. It allows for a fast and consistent onset time of about 10 to 20 minutes. So within 10 to 20 minutes of finishing that beverage or having a portion of it, you are going to feel the THC impacting your body. You're not waiting an hour. You're not waiting if it's going to hit. It's going to be within that 10 to 20 minute window. The offset is going to probably be between 60 and 90 minutes. Now, if you overconsume, meaning your tolerance is 10 milligrams, and let's say you have 50, you might, hours later still be able to feel it, just like you would if you had too much alcohol, where it will stay in your system longer. That's normal. But if you're having a sessionable beverage, just like you would a glass of wine, a couple glasses of wine at a winery, or a couple beers at a brewery, this is going to mimic that effect, just with a different active ingredient that might feel different than alcohol, but is essentially creating the same sessionable experience. But what's really nice about Beverage is how socially acceptable it is. Cannabis has always had a PR problem, and a lot of that PR problem is the smell. People don't necessarily want everyone to know what they're consuming. This is going to look like any other beverage. It's not going to draw any extra attention. It's just another can with, hopefully a nice looking label like Happy Flower here on the right. The first sip is the same as the last. This is what allows for the consistent experience. Because of the emulsion technology, the THC is going to be dispersed evenly within the beverage. So you're not going to have to worry, hopefully knock on wood, that the THC has either floated to the top and you're going to get it all in one sip, or you're going to get it at the very end, or is it going to stick to the liner? Anyone who's worked in alcohol at all knows that scalping is not new or exclusive to cannabinoids. This happens with hops as well as other active ingredients. There has been substantial testing done by a number of the leading suppliers so that they can provide guidance to brands in terms of what sort of can liners they should be using, what sort of packaging material. And a lot of these groups can help with doing those studies if you need to prove stability, or you're doing, your first trial batch. There are ways to ensure that you are using the correct product. What's also nice is there's a big health and wellness driver for these products. Low and no sugar and calorie options are available. A lot of these beverages are 35 calories and under, 65 calories and under. If you're going for a full, full flavor beverage that's using, actual sugar, it's going to be actually, for a lot of them, less calories than a regular Coke. So you're looking at maybe 130 calories or so. There's something for everybody. It just depends on what you're looking for. But what's great is that these taste really wonderful. The target consumer. This is a very wide range. All demographics, obviously adults 21 plus. There's a lot of new and returning to cannabis consumers. A lot of people who are drinking these low dose THC beverages, again, that's up to 10 milligrams per serving, they don't necessarily identify as a cannabis consumer. I don't consume cannabis any other way. I don't smoke, I don't vape. I've tried everything so that I can speak to the experience and I can explain why beverage worked for me. But a lot of people don't consider themselves cannabis consumers if they only consume that way. They consider themselves adult beverage consumers. So a lot of the consumers that you're trying to reach with these low dose products are soccer moms, are someone, looking for another way to take the edge off and don't want to open a bottle of wine if it's just them at home. There's a lot of different options and reasons why people might swap in these products. But ultimately, you are trying to reach the adult beverage consumer, not necessarily the existing cannabis consumer. The THC beverage channels. Historically, you would hear about dispensaries, traditional THC dispensaries. Typically, those are very appealing to the experienced cannabis consumer. And that's where flower, vapes, very potent, high potent THC materials, where a consumer is very well educated in cannabinoids and terpenes. They're likely more experienced than, again, the person that we're trying to reach at a Total Wine & More or a Specs. Low dose THC beverages that originated in the market, let's say in California, overall made up 0.3% of the entire cannabis market. So there wasn't a lot of traction. The dispensaries really don't want to carry low dose THC beverages. Why? They take up a lot of space, they're thin margin, and they have limited options in terms of vault space, in terms of storage that they can have because of the regulations for a dispensary. I always joke that they would hand deliver the low dose products to Total Wine & More and Specs just so that they don't have to deal with them. The high dose products, 100 milligram 2-ounce shots, 100 milligram 12-ounce cans, they sell very well. And that's because of the consumer that is typically walking into a dispensary, experienced, knows what they're looking for, and is not intimidated by all of the products that are there. A lot of those products are also, it's more accepted that they're high sugar. They're used to consuming, a brownie or something that typically does have a higher caloric content. Whereas people right now on the adult beverage side are looking for things that are a little bit more health conscious, lower calorie, lower sugar, etc. So then you go to where alcohol is sold and served. These are, again, people often new to cannabis. They're seeking adult beverage alternatives. The retailer that they're purchasing these from, whether it is a restaurant or a Total Wine & More or an ABC liquor store, this is part of their routine already. They're experiencing and getting exposed to these products because they're in a store that they frequent. Everyone knows that with beer, people would rather have, a distributor or retailer would rather have someone drink 4 out of the 6-pack so that they have to come back the next week to get the additional 6-pack so that they can have another 4 the next time they sit and drink. They like these low dose sessionable products. This is part of getting the consumer to come into their store on a regular basis. Those high dose products that someone might be, a spirits like product that someone might be dosing out over the course of a few weeks, that doesn't keep that same routine. But what's nice about these retailers, typically people are going there on a regular basis anyway to buy their other products, whether those are alcohol or non-alc adult beverages. So low dose is appropriate as well for this stage. This can, right now, a lot of the people that we're attracting and we're seeing the growth from in this category are brand new to THC beverage. Having a 100 milligram beverage on a shelf in Total Wine, there might be some people that are very familiar with what that experience is, but a lot of consumers right now do not know the difference between 2 milligrams, 5 milligrams, 50 milligrams, and 100 milligrams. And anyone who does know knows there's a big difference between For some people, between 2 and 5 is a big difference. For some people, between 5 and 10 is a big difference. But I can definitely tell you between 5 and 50 or 10 and 50 is a huge difference for a lot of consumers. And so right now we need to slowly introduce THC and D9 through, I should say THC, which is D9, to the consumer so that they can take the time to learn their tolerance. And then if they do feel that they need something that's more potent, they can feel more confident walking into a THC dispensary and going into one of those markets. But what we're also seeing is a lot of these markets that have opened up for hemp are in the deep South that will likely never legalize marijuana. Tennessee probably would have been last, one of the last ones, and they have a thriving hemp market. So there's opportunity that's being created here to normalize cannabis as a whole, but also get access, for people who want access to THC products in markets that they typically wouldn't be able to get it, even on the medical side. Target wholesale clients. So look, where do people buy adult beverages? They're going to their licensed alcohol retailers, their ABC stores, their Total Wines. They're going to restaurants and bars where they would normally grab drinks with friends. This is no different, just different active ingredient. And then there's events and entertainment venues. So your typical large hospitality locations. What we learned from Minnesota, again, the pioneer state that I used to refer to as the taste of the future because of how normalized it is there. Restaurants reported an increase in desserts and appetizers at tables that were ordering THC beverages. So this just goes to show you that the munchies are real. But the reality is that it added additional cart value to these restaurants and locations that in Minnesota, a lot of places were not able to open or sell their products during COVID. So breweries and different groups that have added THC beverage to their offerings have actually been able to make up for losses that they had during COVID. That market was a little bit different than others that were still able to do, pick up and go or delivery through DoorDash or another delivery service. Minnesota was a little bit handicapped in that regard. So as a result, this actually helped them get out of that red. And then they also taxed all of the hemp beverages and hemp products at 10% across the board, bringing in additional tax revenue that was literally growing like 50 to 100% month over month when it first launched. So pretty incredible how much money that they were able to pull in, but also help education programs, health and mental health programs that they were doing in the state as well. But this is where adults buy adult beverages. So this is where these products belong. Again, starting with low dose, so that up to 10 milligrams per serving, whether it's a multi-serving or ready-to-drink product. So let's talk about the market shifts. A year ago, if I did this call, distributors would be on here and looking at each other like, are you going to carry this product? Are you going to carry one of these? Are you going to do it? A year's gone by. It's the exact opposite now. A lot of you are very well versed in this category. Specs has now evaluated between 300 and 400 products. You guys have evaluated a number of products. The tides have turned. There's a lot of interest in this category. It's not just Minnesota anymore. So it's an exciting time to be part of the space, but it doesn't mean that there aren't changes that you should be aware of and things that you should be looking for in the marketplace. So alcohol and hemp are joining forces, which obviously is the purpose of CABA existing. Last year, when the Miller Amendment hit that posed a risk to banning hemp-derived THC products, including beverages, it really brought alcohol to the table. And we had a lot of conversations about how we can partner up to make sure that we put the appropriate guardrails in place to keep the consumer safe. Right now, there are 32 states that allow for hemp-derived THC beverages in some capacity. The dosages range, the caps range. Typically, what we're seeing are 5 or 10 milligram caps. Some have a per package dosage between 50 and 100. Some do not offer a per package. It's all single units. It varies by state, and it's important that you really pay attention to the markets that you're launching in. Connecticut has a 3 milligram cap. I believe Virginia has 2. Iowa has 4. There's a lot of variance. What we're looking for, hopefully in the future, and what CABA is really promoting is consistency. What I can tell you is that when you are evaluating products, if they are providing a 5 or 10 milligram beverage, that's likely to be accepted in a majority of the markets that are passing regulation now, because that's the range that people are looking for. So I think the risk in terms of picking up 5 and 10 milligram beverages is likely lower than if you see higher dose products. Like, I've been in a couple markets where a 50 milligram beverage is in the middle of a display and it looks very similar. I'm a trained eye, and I've had a scenario where I've accidentally bought a 50 milligram beverage. I can tell you right now, I might drink these regularly. A 50 milligram beverage is going to put me to sleep while I'm drinking it. It's too much for me. So I think it's important that right now, while we're in this new stage of introducing this new active ingredient through beverage, which is not considered one of your traditional edible experiences from when you were back in college, we have to take our time. We have to introduce and educate effectively to make sure the consumer knows what they're getting. And that goes for the retailers and the distributors as well, because the consumers are going to look to you guys. The retailers are going to look to the distributors. They're going to ask these questions about these products. So the more you understand what you're carrying and the experience it delivers, and I know a lot of distributors on this call, some of which I've spoken to before, I know you guys have become consumers yourself. So you're very familiar with the different brands, which is great. But obviously a lot has changed over the last year. Since last year, you probably wouldn't have joined this call, but now you guys are very involved in the space, and we're really grateful that we have you guys in our corner. And we're working in the same sandbox now. We always wanted to play in the same sandbox. One thing we are seeing, major retailers are seeing 20% growth month over month. The market projections from Fortune Business have the global market being over 117 billion by 2032. It's 2025. That's not that far away. North America would account for most of that at approximately 82 billion. This is all dependent, though, on sensible regulation being implemented. So hopefully we will continue to see accessibility increase and, again, more a clear pathway moving forward for distribution. Regulatory update. First, I will start by saying we, again, are not a regulatory body. We are not a legal entity. And we can give recommendations, but I can tell you, as soon as I put this map in here, something changed. So, before you enter any market, before you evaluate where you're going to launch products, love your consultant, love your lawyer, dig into it. There are some wonderful lawyers and groups that have been specialized in this, that have really focused in on beverage and edibles. And I'm happy to make introductions to those groups if you need assistance. Those groups are better suited to do this than anyone. And like I said, you could blink and new regs will come out for 4 states. So, and I guarantee you, this year we will have 15 or so states that come out with new hemp regulations. Hopefully we can standardize those a little bit, which again is our goal, as well as the Hemp Beverage Alliance's goal. But that is going to really influence what happens with the Farm Bill. So we'll talk about that. As many of you know, the Farm Bill was kicked out another year to the end of 2025. So we have a little bit more time. What we learned last year from the Miller Amendment and then the Appropriations Act proposal was that we can get sucker punched at any time. As much as I am more than cautiously optimistic that this category is here to stay, we know that regulators have a lot of power and they can do whatever they want, regardless of what we think. The capping capping out of the bag, they might be able to get that cap back in the bag. We don't want to sit back and not focus and educate and get people on our side because we think this is too big, they can't shut it down. So we are continuing our advocacy at the federal level. We are working with our partners at the state level to make sure that we have support there as well, because it's going to be a 2-pronged approach. The Farm Bill, we need to keep our category alive, and we are basically pushing for states' rights, and we're providing the guardrails for them to implement those. Again, trying to get consistency where the dosage caps are the same, tax structures are similar, the distribution models are similar. It's going to look a lot like the 3-tier system, I can tell you that. Appropriations, March 14th. That's actually the nearest deadline that we have. So everyone's been talking about the Farm Bill, but appropriations goes through on March 14th. So right now, our focus is making sure that the language, very similar to what the Mary Miller Amendment put out there to ban these products, that language is not included in what is put past on March 14th. Again, cautiously optimistic. I would say I'm more than optimistic. We've had some really great conversations, and because we're taking a reasonable approach leveraging a infrastructure that has been effective at keeping intoxicating products out of the hands of kids, and also, to the target consumer. Everyone knows what alcohol is. We choose to consume it in moderation. Everyone has the choice. It's the same thing with this. We want these products to be accessible so people have the choice of having this or non-alc or an alcoholic beverage. And again, it's not an either or. Many people forget the experience and the environment often dictate what beverage someone selects. So it's not an either or. There's just more options now. Markets to watch. The three most influential markets on the liquor side are California, Texas, and Florida. Currently, California has a ban on these products. There's a lot of factors that went into California having a ban. It is something that we are actively working on, and marijuana as well as hemp industries are working together to come up with a compromise. And that's what it's going to be. You got to give to get. We're not going to necessarily get the dosage cap we want, or maybe the tax structure we want, but we can come up with something that allows for us to create a low dose hemp channel for beverage, as well as maybe some other categories as well, but beverage is our focus. But that can also lead to a customer journey that gets them into a dispensary as cannabis is normalized, as their tolerance goes up, as they get more familiar with THC as a whole. So we do believe that what we can do through hemp is actually provide a pathway forward to have more success, whether it's marijuana or hemp-derived D9. California, we're working on. I think it's going to be a long year of trying to get those things opened up. But again, if people come to the table with solutions and meet in the middle, I think we can be successful there. Texas also, Dan Patrick did put out, a warning that he was looking at banning some of these products as well. There's a lot of education happening right now in Texas, a lot of hemp as well as alcohol groups that are getting actively involved in setting guardrails for different categories. Another area, I'm cautiously optimistic. We have some great partners down in Texas that have done a great job at representing the category and educating. Specs is one that obviously I'm going to highlight. They are on our board, and they have really brought a number of champions to the table. But we also work with the Texas Package Store Association, so the liquor store associations that have lobbied on the Hill, in each state for decades. They have a lot of influence. They have a lot of relationships. They have a lot of history. These are groups that we can use to further penetrate and have success at the state level. So we continue backing our partners at the various state levels. If any of you on this call are actively working in a state and having difficulty or would like some support, the Hemp Beverage Alliance is focused on a lot of state lobbying efforts. We are also willing to get involved as well and provide our code of conduct and other guardrails to continue moving the category forward. So please don't hesitate to reach out to me, whether it's during or after this presentation, and we can set up a call and see how we can support and make introductions as necessary as well. Florida. So I think a lot of people know, famously, Florida had a ban, had a bill that would have capped beverage at 5 milligrams. 5 milligrams is something that our category can survive in. A lot of other categories would probably suffer more with a 5 milligram cap, or other caps were defined in that bill. That bill ended up getting vetoed. We expect to have another, bill emerge, because look, what they're trying to do is protect the consumer and get rid of the bad actors. The good actors are going to abide by the regulations. The bad actors, even if you put a ban in there, they're probably still going to sell their product, because that's what bad actors do. They do bad things. So we're asking for sensible regulation. We're asking to meet them in the middle, and I think we'll be successful. But those are the three most influential liquor markets. And as a result, for our category, they're going to be extremely influential for low-dose THC beverages as well. I threw Tennessee in here. Wisconsin's another one that I can mention. They have hemp programs that, have been fairly successful with regulations in place that have allowed the category to thrive. Some are still, this is a work in progress. This is going to be about progress over perfection. They're going to learn things as they roll out certain regulations. But what's great is when the alcohol industry is getting involved at the state level to improve upon those regulations. That's where we're the most successful. And as I said, we are federally focused as a coalition, but again, we will support our partners at the state level when needed. So don't hesitate to reach out to us. Evaluating THC beverages. So the meat of what this is, key factors. The main things you guys are going to be looking for about products that you should be picking up and things that brands should be keeping in mind when they are preparing to present their products to distributors and retailers. Legal compliance. One thing we talk about a lot, I mean, these are hemp-derived THC products. That is imperative that it is hemp-derived for it to enter this market and abide by the regulations set by the Farm Bill. What we don't want to see is on the front of the can, it to say hemp, because that would be very confusing to the consumer. They might not know that it's an intoxicating beverage. So compliance, it's important that hemp is mentioned and that you can actually see the chain of custody that shows you, from seed to sale, where this plant is coming from, where the material is coming from, the process in which it's being, isolated and converted. All of that material, all of that documentation should be available and is available if you ask your brand partner to supply it. Many brands do have enough documentation, oftentimes double the amount alcohol brands have to provide distributors and retailers to get picked up. And that's a result of us trying to make up for the trust issue that we have. We're a new category, working within a loophole. We know it's a loophole. That's why we want the guardrails. We don't want to work in a loophole. We want a clear pathway forward. So in order to do that, we have to present ourselves in a way where we are proving that we can abide by the traditional food and beverage, adult beverage guardrails. So that includes staying within dosing guidelines, being completely transparent, showing your isolation process, whether it's chromatography or another way that you're creating that THC out of hemp. We need clear labels, consistent labels. It needs to be very clear it's an intoxicating product. We would like to see the nutritional panel and the ingredients listed. Within the ingredients, you can list it as hemp, as long as it's, again, for compliance purposes. Chain of custody documentation, that should be something that is, readily available. And then testing. We do recommend putting a QR code on the packaging of the individual can, as well as, any, 4-pack or 6-pack packaging. The reason we do that is not necessarily because the consumer knows to check for a COA. Let's be honest. Most consumers do not know what they're looking at for a COA. This should really be utilized by the retailers and the distributors to confirm that the product has been tested. And again, these brands should have testing history that you can ask to see to make sure that the dosage has been consistent through numerous batches. That would show and prove that the experience should be the same. So if someone bought a 6-pack of that product 6 months ago and they bought a 6-pack of it today, that can should taste and provide the same experience as the initial 6-pack they bought 6 months ago. Of course, if your tolerance goes up, that's a little bit of a different situation. So if you continuously drink those, you'll see a gradual, steady increase, but it shouldn't be drastic, where you feel like you got the entire dose of the beverage in one sip versus the entire 12 ounces or however large of a mocktail or cocktail you make. Ooh, there we go. Labeling and packaging. Best practices. So this is one of the labels that I've seen in the marketplace by High Spirits that has pretty much all of the details we've been asking for. So dosage front and center, he's got the 5 milligram THC is very clear. There is no doubt, whether this is an intoxicating product and whether or not this has THC in it. They also included, and what you'll see here in this kind of big marijuana leaf, it's the universal symbol by ASTM for THC. It's a consistent indicator that this is a THC product. You'll also notice that they also have an additional symbol here at the top, all natural, because that's how they're positioning their product. They also included 21 plus, as well as some warnings on the right-hand side. So you'll see not for sale to those under 21. You'll see a number of warnings for health that you would see on alcohol packages. You'll also see the manufacturing information, all things that are standard again with adult beverage. Now, we have asked for additional nutritional facts to be included, as well as an ingredient panel. And the main reason for that is because a lot of these brands, not only are we trying to be transparent and show you what is in our products, but a lot of these brands are positioning themselves as healthy alternatives to other products on the market. As a result, I bet the consumer would like to confirm that. seeing that this product has 8 calories in it, and 2 grams of sugar versus another beverage that they might be drinking, whether it's a non-alc or alcoholic beverage. A lot of those non-alc beverages, to taste good, have a lot of additional sugars. So being able to make that comparison is important. So the nutritional facts are there. And then, of course, you see at the bottom left-hand corner, there's a QR code, and that is for their, testing, traceability, certificate of analysis. All of that information should be there. Obviously, labels will vary if states have specific requirements. We are trying to advocate and educate on how we can create consistent labeling for scalability purposes, and again, consistency, so that the consumer knows where to look for certain things and they can get familiar. For example, if they understand what 5 milligrams of THC is and they're looking for it in a specific symbol or in a specific location, it becomes very much like ABV, which they're very familiar with if they're looking at different products. And, you're at a brewery, that's a 5% ABV, that one's 12. That's going to change for some people. That will indicate whether or not they try that beverage. I know it would for me, because I could not handle the IPAs in the Northwest. Frequently asked questions. So these are questions that distributors should know that they can ask, but also be able to answer if someone is, questioning what's going on within their marketplace. So our THC beverage is legal to sell. From a compliance standpoint, because of the Farm Bill, the active ingredient can be used, in various applications. The FDA has not taken any action against any product unless they make health claims. So that's where you really need to make sure that they're not saying it's curing any illness or disease. There's a reason you'll see calm, chill, relax, certain keywords that are descriptors, but they're not referring to any health claims or structure function claims. Are there licenses needed for wholesalers and or distributors? So in some markets, yes. Some there aren't. But what we recommend is for you, again, to check with your consultant or lawyer, understanding what is required. The hemp licenses are typically not expensive, probably relatively similar to what you'll see for an alcohol license. Sometimes that causes friction when you have a marijuana sector within the same market as a hemp sector, and the licensing fees are very different. And we understand that that causes some friction. What we would look to do and partnering with groups at the state level would be, instead of trying to make it more difficult for hemp, let's try and get those regulations more manageable on the marijuana side, instead of trying to make it really difficult for one sector to work. We know that there's a lot of overregulation on the marijuana side in some states. As a result, we should be working together to see if we can come up again with common ground and figure out a way that we can support both sides of this market when they exist within the same state. How is the brand marketing their product? And the reason I put this in here, we've had a number of retailers provide feedback on marketing materials they've seen from brands, messaging that they particularly deliver. One thing that we know, alcohol does not advertise getting wasted. They're not talking about getting really drunk. They're not talking about that. So why would we talk about getting really high? It doesn't make sense. We don't want to encourage overconsumption. It's the same thing that they worry about when they see language that says no hangovers. Because as much as you might not get hangover side effects from having a little more THC than your tolerance allows, you still might have an undesirable experience. And an undesirable experience is undesirable, period. If you're not happy with the product because you've overconsumed, it's a negative experience. You might not have hangover side effects, but if you're anxious or you have high anxiety, which is what happens to me if I overconsume, I'm literally consuming these products to help me calm down. If I overconsume, it does the opposite. Candidly, I'd rather have a hangover and an excuse to have greasy Mexican food the next morning than I would, have an anxiety attack where I'm not going to have rational thoughts in that moment. That's how people panic and they don't know when it's going to be over. Those are things we want to avoid, particularly when we have a new consumer who might not be familiar with the difference between 5 and 50 milligrams. And if you're going to tell them no hangover, then they're thinking, well, then who cares if I have 50? Why would I buy the 5 if I can have 50? I mean, if I can't have a hangover, what's the downside? Those are the things we need to avoid, because we're trying to build trust. And consumers, when they have a negative experience with something, if it's the first time, they're not coming back again. So we need to make sure that we are educating the retailers, the distributors, the brands. Everyone is being educated the same and understanding what our active ingredient can do. So when you ask a brand to see their marketing material, you're looking for how they're positioning themselves. You're looking to see if they have cartoons or anything in particular that would, market to minors. I don't think we have many bad actors in our space. I think the barrier to entry on the beverage side is pretty high. I mean, people aren't sitting around with bottling lines in their garage waiting for a loophole in the Farm Bill. But there are 400 brands out there, and I've probably seen 100 of them. So what are the other 300 doing? And it's important that we're aware that in some cases there might be products out there that we need to better understand or see their marketing. The other thing we look for is multiple cannabinoids. D9 is the active cannabinoid that cannabis consumers and new consumers to this category understand. Other cannabinoids, some of which I've had to Google, like the new and novel ones that are particularly potent, those are things that we don't want to see in this space right now. We just don't. It's confusing for the consumer. They don't know how D9, THC is going to be impacted or how it will interact with the other cannabinoids, with the exception of the ones that aren't psychoactive. I should say psychotropic or intoxicating. So there are things like that. You'll see CBD and THC kind of put together. You'll see THCV every once in a while. But again, right now we've got a new consumer, and it's almost more important for us to keep it simple, let them get used to the intoxicating one, and then slowly start educating as they get more familiar. I think in the future, we'll see more intentional beverages that are really designed for a very specific experience and maybe use other adaptogens and cannabinoids. I just don't think we're there yet because, again, we're still introducing a new target demo to this category. Where should THC beverages be positioned at retail? We've always asked that they are near alcohol, where alcohol is sold and served, so that it's obvious that it's part of an adult beverage category. We do want it to be indicated that it is a THC beverage versus a non-alc or an alcoholic beverage. There have been some tips and tricks that a lot of retailers have used. If they're in a refrigerator, they put tape on the window that has THC very clearly indicated so that it's obvious that that particular section is THC. Obviously, we've seen the end caps where it just says THC beverages. There's a lot of ways to make it very clear what it is, but we do recommend that it is, again, only available where alcohol is sold and served. We don't have any interest really in being included or sold in head shops, smoke shops, places where age gating isn't necessarily standard or where they're used to 18 and over, not 21 and over. That's why we're looking to be sold and served where alcohol is available. That's where the adults are looking for adult beverages. That's where it makes sense for us to be. Can you ask about the brand supply chain partners? This is a huge yes. As I mentioned earlier, if you were looking to be active in this space, moving forward, and be regulated by a group like the TTB, you should be expecting to be audited and have 100% transparency, which means your supply chain partners will have to be just as transparent. The reality is, when I worked over at Source Technology, and I know that at Vertosa and a number of other suppliers would get on the phone with distributors and retailers to walk them through the materials, the process, how the documentation, so that the retailer and distributor would feel comfortable picking up that product and knowing that this was a safe product that was going to offer their consumer a consistent and, again, safe experience. Supply chain partners should be offering to do that. We should be eager to do that. So if someone tells you like, oh, I don't want to introduce you to them, they're my secret sauce, it's IP. I'm not saying that they're a bad actor, but I'm not saying that they're the best actor. I really feel that transparency is key and that all of us, for the most part, are working together on the education component, and that transparency is crucial. So if you start, getting answers you're not thrilled with and they put little red flags up, red flags are there for a reason. Brand supply chain partners should very much be part of the conversation. And then that kind of goes into this documentation section. The documentation exists. There's no IP. This is a food ingredient at this point. They should be able to show you purity testing, chain of custody, seed to sale documentation. That stuff exists. Stability testing exists. Historical, batch testing. Ask if they've had a recall. Also ask why they had a recall, because a lot of times brands will have their product pulled from a shelf because a state has changed their regs and now their labels are no longer compliant. The product's fine. It just the label doesn't have that symbol that they need, and the retailer doesn't want to just put stickers on the product. There's a lot of reasons for that. So make sure you ask those questions about why something's happened too, because there might be a very good answer for it. And again, their supply chain partners should be able to back up those discussion points as well. Educating your partners. So retailers and consumers also have questions. Is the THC the beverage I'm getting at the Total Wine, is that the same THC that's at the dispensary? D9 is D9, THC is THC. It should give you the same experience if it's the same dosage. Any other difference in experience would have to be from the other ingredients that might be in that product, but typically speaking, that should be the same. Difference between traditional edibles and drinks. Drinks have that consistent experience, the onset and offset I talked about in the beginning. Edibles don't typically offer that. The body has to break down the gummy or the brownie or whatever it's in. Then if it's made with an oil, your body's got to digest that oil. It's essentially going to emulsify it through the liver. It's going to take longer, and that's going to be different for everybody. So from a hospitality standpoint, drinks and particularly insurance, drinks are a much safer option to be offering for on-premise consumption because of that consistency. The consumer knows how much time they're going to need to, have it going out of their system to where they feel comfortable driving again. Those are things that you might not traditionally get with an edible. Side effects, we kind of touched on this. You can have, if you have too much THC, you can have anxiety, you can have red eyes, you can have dry mouth, you can have the munchies. The side effects are not nearly as bad as some other things out, that people have experienced. However, there can be side effects and they can be undesirable. Got to be 21 and over. That's a key thing. A lot of people are confused as to whether it's 18 or over because some other products market themselves as THC products that are 18 over, particularly vapes and gummies at certain markets. This is 21 and over. Again, we're consistent with alcohol. And then how much should I drink if I'm new to THC beverages? This is a question we get all the time. Most new consumers and a single drinking occasion, meaning over the course of, let's say, 2 to 3 hours, are probably drinking between 10 and 15 milligrams of THC. So that allows for a number of different beverages. I like this image. It varies by the individual. Everyone's tolerance is different, but 2.5 milligrams for a lot of people is similar to a light beer, maybe a 4-ounce glass of wine. 5 milligrams might be similar to like 2 glasses of wine, or an IPA, a heavier, ABV. 10 milligrams, like I said, for me is too much. I'm someone who wants to have 4 2.5 milligram drinks over the course of time. So that's going to vary. The words to live by as you're learning your tolerance: start low and go slow. You will learn your tolerance over time. Your tolerance will change just as it does with alcohol, but the best way to do it is to start low and go slow. Insurance requirements. Insurance does exist for this category. Providers are developing THC teams for this. On-premise consumption is the biggest quote unquote red flag. People have got questions. They're not sure how to insure or underwrite these programs. We have large hospitality venues that have proven very challenging because they're not sure how to integrate this into their traditional setting that has lots of alcohol consumption. Event insurance, so temporary, event insurance for a weekend. There are groups providing this. If you are having trouble finding insurance providers for on-premise in particular, or anything else, please reach out to us. We do have groups that we've worked with, and we are happy to make introductions. Everyone's situation is different about why they're having difficulty with insurance, but we are happy to make those introductions because the solutions are out there, and you should be getting them, and they should be very similar to the alcohol programs that you would get in terms of insurance and underwriting programs there. Can alcohol and THC beverages coexist in hospitality settings? Yes, they can in some markets, not all. You will not be buying a beverage that is pre-mixed with alcohol and THC. That is illegal, and we will not be seeing that. But we do hear a lot about crossfading, people that are integrating products or having alcohol and then having THC going back and forth. We're hearing about that. We know what's happening. The reality is crossfading has been happening for decades. How many people at bars go outside and smoke a joint and then come back into their vodka soda? This is actually a safer way to control the dosage and actually know what the consumer that's in your establishment is consuming. Because again, the dosage and the experience are consistent. This menu on the right is actually from the first place I went in Minnesota, where I saw THC beverages on the market, or on the menu. I was blown away. Everyone else thought this was like the most normal thing in the world because they were based in Minnesota and they do that every day. But this was like a huge moment for me because look how normal it is. It belongs there. But for us, it seemed like this big, moment, if you will. And then we get the question all the time, how can you tell when someone's had too much? Frankly, it's going to be subjective, just like when you're looking at someone, did they have too much vodka or did they have too much? Like if they're slurring their words, they're having trouble walking, things like that, you're going to see it's going to feel like a field test. But the reality is the tolerance ranges so much with consumers. 10 milligrams for me is a lot. It's not a lot to some other people. Resources. Couple things. We do have a code of conduct, which is best practices and recommended regulations. We are happy to share that with anyone interested. We do have an industry overview one sheet that we can share. We are also willing to do private education sessions. We will have template regulations ready in the near future that we will also make available once our website is live. These things will all be available to download so that you can use them at the state or federal level or just education purposes. My contact information is at the bottom left. You can always email me if you have questions about CABA or the industry in general, or if you're looking for connections and being, connected to the right party for a specific instance. And then the bottom right-hand corner, I mentioned this group, Aficionado. They do a training and certification program for cannabis beverages. I'm going to keep this up here for a little bit. I know we're running close here. We're basically at 5. This QR code will take you to their program where you can sign up. This is great if you have a team that you want to get certified or trained on these products. They walk you through kind of the history of cannabis all the way through to beverage specifically and the experience. This is a really great partner that we're really happy to be able to support. And you actually get a certificate if you pass. So check this out. And if you have questions about the program or want to be connected to someone directly at the Aficionado program, I'm happy to make introductions there as well. And then the last thing I'll mention, upcoming events. There are 2 in February that a number of our members will be at. So if you'd like to connect, please reach out to me. Access Live is WSWA's annual event. It is February 3rd through the 6th in Denver, Colorado. A number of us will be there having meetings and doing educational sessions. So again, if you're looking to learn more about the category, please reach out to me directly and we can set something up. And then CanadaDataCon, which has become a big favorite, particularly because a lot of us live in cold climates during February, so we're pretty excited to go to Miami. But it's also because we talk a lot about regulation and the pathway forward, and there's a lot of data being incorporated into those conversations. And data has been a missing kind of hole for our category. Even though we are seeing growth, it's very hard to say how big this market is. So great conversation if you happen to be in the Miami area. And want to meet up with some of us, we will be down there. Again, feel free to reach out to me and we will find ways to connect. We are right at 5 o'clock. I will see if we have any questions and I'll stay on a little bit longer if anyone else wants to stay, but don't feel like you need to. And I'm going to stop the share real quick. Question about the recording. We will be distributing that. We will also send a follow-up link with the deck, so you will have access to the deck as well. Let's see, we have states besides Minnesota and Tennessee that have been most successful in developing their THC beverage markets. Oh, goodness. Particularly with hospitality, large-scale retail. I mean, Texas, again, knock on wood, I think we're going to be successful keeping that up. And open in Texas in particular, but they've done a great job working with their liquor partners down there, Specs, the Texas Package Store Association, in terms of educating and putting guardrails in place. They've done a great job. They do have a lot of high dose products that are still out in the market, not particularly for beverage, but I do believe that they are setting a good foundation. Wisconsin, it has a kind of a thriving hemp market as well. We're seeing a lot in Georgia's not ideal entirely from a hospitality standpoint because I believe they just got rid of on-premise consumption. But, Georgia, Louisiana, a lot of the South Carolina, A lot of these markets have implemented regulations that really allow for beverage to thrive. Hospitality is still, growing and emerging. I think people are still testing the waters, but the more that insurance catches up with our industry, the more likely it is that we will see success, in these markets as we continue to see these alcohol and THC beverages integrate with each other. Let's see, what chain of custody traceability requirements do you favor? Metric is obviously something that a lot of people use in the regulated space. In the dispensary channel, it's required by the states. A lot of times you can get the traceability documentation from your supplier. If you were buying emulsion from Source or Vertosa or another leading supplier, they will likely grab the documentation from their raw material supplier, or if you're connected to the raw material supplier, you can get that documentation as well. And you should be able to see, essentially the born on date, where that product is coming from, what state it's coming from. You should be able to see all of that information. I know that OBX, Open Book Extracts, has been one of the groups that has been particularly successful in providing all of that chain of custody, which has been extremely helpful for brands who are looking to get into new retail locations. Let's see. Margin is a toughie, I think, because there right now is a lack of transparency. Margin varies pretty drastically between the brands. I'm probably not the right person to speak on that, but Wes, I can follow up with you and probably put you in touch with someone that can be probably give you more color and context around the margins that they're seeing, depending on the retailer that they're working with. Will there be CABA merch? Eventually there will be, absolutely. Growth stats for on-premise versus off. We are working on getting growth stats, particularly in states like Minnesota, because once it's taxed, it's a lot easier to track where you're seeing traction. So we're hoping that we will see a lot more of that in the near future from markets that have either begun taxing this category or have really started permitting and tracking on-premise consumption. It will really be up to the retailer or the venue to probably share that information, but we are having those conversations. Okay. Awesome. I think we've covered all the questions. I will go through the list at the end and follow up with you via email if you guys have anything that you need me to touch on. Diana at adultbevalt.org if you guys need anything. On that note, I will let you guys go. Thank you for joining me, and we will do this in a month, third Thursday every month. If there's any other topics you want me to cover, feel free to either throw it in the Q&A section or email me and ask for more information on it. We will make sure to include that in the next session. Thanks so much, guys. Have a great rest of your day.